Okay, hello everybody. Good to be with you again. So this afternoon, what we, over the next hour or so, are going to undertake is to think about the connections in the field, both our own and the field overall, how we are dependent and connected with each other, what the effect is of those dependencies, whether it's feeding and nurturing the field or whether it's making it more difficult, and what kind of constructive change do we see as possible, and how can we use the strength and the power that we have in this field to bring those changes about. Okay, so as Bea talked about, we are, the point here is not to complain about the field or to be negative. The point instead is to really use our collective intelligence to say, okay, let's look from all the different angles that we, as this group of over 100 people here online, have. Let's look at the mechanics. So how is the field built? And what's the effect of that structure? And how it is affecting the different professions, and what can we do? So I can imagine that as many of you are maybe alone in your own space doing this, this might sound kind of complicated, or it might sound like a lot of work, or it might be, you might feel kind of on your own with this right now. So I urge you to connect now again to all of the other people on this call in your spirit and in your mind, so that you know that we are all working on this together, and that what we have to bring is valuable for the field. So as Bea said, the hope is that this work we do together now is going to create some results, some thoughts, some questions and ideas that people can offer, and the Dachverband Tanz can use that in their work to support the field further. So we'll talk about that more at the end. Right now, if we can just prepare your things. So we're going to use the die Fragensammlungen, the question groups that you hopefully received in the mail. So if you have those printed out, or if you have them on your computer, please get them so they're available for you. And also, if you have one sheet of paper, a blank sheet of paper, if you can just tear it in half, okay? So that you have that ready. Just take a minute and get yourself organized for that. Okay, great. All right, so you can put those two pieces of paper to the side. So our goal here is to think about what supports the resilience of the dance field and the vitality of the dance field. Our ability to get back up when there's problems, and our ability to thrive and to think differently and to think dancerly, I would say, to use our dance thinking to move into the world. I was talking yesterday to a group of mediators, and I was reflecting on how much I value the work of dancers and the work of those who work in dance. And a lot of that, what I value is this daily return to ideas, that everything essentially falls apart every day, and we keep coming back to it. And that ability to reapproach these questions and these issues and these challenges and possibilities with a new take on it every day is something that I really value in the work of dancers and of dance thinkers in general. So I want to encourage us to tap into that today, okay? So here we go. All right, as we move through these three sections, which are looking at how you are connected in the field, and then what in the field overall, what kind of connections we see, and then three, what are the dependencies within that? How are we dependent on each other within that? How are the different professions or the different areas of research or work dependent on each other? And what's the effect of those dependencies? They might be negative, they might be positive. And given all that information, what kind of constructive change is possible? And this doesn't mean that everything's bad. This means that we have tremendous possibility. And we can use all of this to move forward together. So let's start. Okay, as we work, there might be different words that could mean different things to different people, like work, profession, field, dance, all these things. People might have different opinions about that. Stick with your own. You just decide what that means for you, okay? So the other thing is that because we're all far apart, not in the same room, we may have different tempos. So sometimes things might seem just way too fast, or they might just seem like way too slow. So I ask you to just hang with me, if you can, through that, and we'll make it through and we'll end up in the same place eventually, all right? Okay, so great. Okay, so we are going to begin with question group number A, and we're going to start just really simply. If you could take 5 minutes and just look at these questions, down your thoughts, okay? This is just to get us oriented. All right, so let's go ahead with that. Thank you. I'll keep track of the time. This is question group A. Okay, so if you could wrap that up, finish up with that. Okay, all right, you can put A to the side. So now we're going to expand out our attention to the entire field and to thinking about all of the different professional groups and the connections between them. So we're going to be working with question group B here. So if you could just get that paper ready, you don't need to use it yet, but just get it ready. Okay. Okay, so the goal here is to increase vitality and resilience. And with that goal, if you could please choose 2 professional groups between which you see that the systems of dependence create difficulties and where it would be beneficial to create change. So here we're looking at the whole field, so it doesn't need to include your own profession. It can if you want. But if you could just think of 2 professions where you've noticed that difficulty tends to come up in the relation of dependence. Okay, again, the goal here is not to complain about it, but to actually look at it with our collective intelligence and figure out where constructive change is possible. Okay, so take a moment and please write down those 2 professions in question group B. Okay, great. All right, so now you can either stand up or sit down, whatever works best for you. If you can now take your 2 hands and make one hand one of the professions and the other hand the other profession. So the 2 professions you just wrote down, one hand is the one hand is the other, okay? So let those spirit move into those 2 hands. Now you're gonna start moving the hands toward each other, and you might come together, you might not, you might go apart, whatever it is. But let yourself notice the dynamic when you start to move them together. What's the relationship? Okay, so what we're going to do now is use that awareness that your body is giving you about what dynamics you notice to think about the 4 questions in question group B. Okay, so you can start with the hands until you get a good feeling. Look at the question 1. Think about it. You can use the hands to think about it. When you have an idea about that, write down something for question 1 and then go on to question 2. You can either go back to your hands if you want in between, whatever works best for you. Okay? So we're going to take about 12 minutes for these 4 questions, and you just go at your own pace. And let the body's wisdom in the hands really inform you about what you notice and feel. Maybe what you habitually feel, maybe what you think might be possible, whatever it is, okay? I'll keep track and I'll let you know when we hit 6 minutes and 9 minutes so you can stay with the timing, okay? So let's go ahead now. You can begin with your hands and then start with the questions. Thank you. Sorry, one thought I forgot to mention is that what you're experiencing with the dynamic may be the result of outside systems as well. It may not just be the internal systems. So you might notice that the dynamic you're experiencing is coming from outside forces. And you can also mention that. Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead. Let's start with your hands and move into the questions. Okay, we're at 6 minutes now, so about halfway through. Okay, so there's 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes. Okay, thank you. So if you could wrap that up and let's come back together. Okay, so now we dived pretty quickly straight into these topics. Let's take a second. Let's step back into our own bodies. So if you can take, after so much looking at screens and everything, take a moment and maybe take your glasses off if you want to, and just cover your eyes with your hands and let your eyes rest. Let yourself just not to look at anything for a second. Just let your eyes be easy. There'll be easy darkness. Okay. Now, if you could take your hands and put them over your ears and just give yourself a break from listening. I'll wave at you when we're ready to start. Okay. You come back with your ears. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's just take a second, rub your hands together, get your energy up. Start connecting to yourself. Put your hands on your chest and your stomach. Feel your breathing. I notice that my breathing gets a little shallow in the whole COVID thing, so just take a second to really take a breath. Whew. All right. Okay, now we're going to move into section C. And again, we're doing a lot of work here, and I can imagine for some people, if you're on your own, it might feel like a lot of work. Again, I encourage you to connect everybody else, that we are doing common research here, okay? So let's go back. If you want to stand up or sit down, it's up to you. And we're going to review those postures we did this morning, which we're going to use in a moment, okay? So let's go back to the first one, which is a hands down. Location, okay? So connect to where you are, whatever that means to you. We're just going to take 3 breaths this time, each one connecting a little more deeply. Location. Okay, now take your hands on your stomach and connect to your own body. Notice what's going on in your body. What are the energies? Where are the tensions? Where are the eases? What's happening in your throat? What's happening in your eyes? How are your hands doing? How's your back doing? And let yourself be easy. Okay, take your hands to your chest. Now we're talking about connections that are important to us. So you're connecting out to the things or the people or the places that are important to you and imagining them as actual lines. Take a moment, send those lines out, connect to those lines. Where are your important connections? Okay, now we take your hands up to the throat, please. And here we're coming to the question of what is unspoken, so what is not said, and what is spoken. And we'll use this in a moment, so spoken and unspoken. Okay, and then take your hands to your top of your head. And here we're thinking about what we practice. What do we practice and practice it? What are the things that we believe or that are important to us that shape the practice that we choose to do every day? Okay, and then we have arms up, and here we are connecting to the strength of the whole field, the field of dance. And this can mean anyone who's thinking and dancing in any way, okay? The power that we have and all the different complexities that are involved in that matrix of energy and strength. All right. Okay, great. So now we're going to work with question C. So if you could get out question C, there's actually a little mistake in one of the German versions, so I want to correct that. So, wenn Sie die deutsche Version haben, dann schauen Sie bitte auf Frage 1 in C. Okay. Currently it says, was sind aus dieser Perspektive die Stärken, I don't have the correct one here. Was sind aus dieser Perspektive die Stärke dieses Berufsfeldes? But it should be, was sind aus dieser Perspektive die Stärken innerhalb dieser Beziehung? Okay, so cross out dieses Berufsfeldes and please add, was sind aus dieser Perspektive die Stärken innerhalb dieser Beziehung? So that's only for the German version. The English version is correct. I just copied and pasted the wrong thing. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so here we go. So now what's going to happen is please pick up the 2 pieces of paper that you ripped in half before. And on one sheet of paper, write down one of the professions. So in the last section where you were working with 2 professions where there was difficulties, write down one of those professions on one and the other on the other. Okay? Okay, great. So now if you could take these 2 pieces of paper and put them on the floor opposite each other, like this. So you're creating a relationship here, okay? And what is going to happen now is we are going to alternate between perspectives. We're going to use the postures as part of the way to do it, and we're going to think through 3 questions, and we're going to think through them from each perspective, all right? So the way it'll work is I'll ask you to, let's just go ahead and start. So if you go ahead and stand in profession 1, which means you'll stand here. I'm now in profession 1, and I'm looking at profession 2. Okay, so you are creating a relationship. And here what we're going to do is bring together the different work that we've been doing with imagining ourselves in particular situations and thinking through it physically, okay? So if you stand in profession 1, connect yourself in relationship to profession 2. So you're imagining yourself to be a person in this profession. And then we will, in a moment, the list of postures will come up. I'm going to ask you to pick a posture. And then I'll read the questions out loud. You can also, of course, have them with you. And please think about this question. For example, let's say I'm in the press, let's say I'm a dancer. And let's say I've chosen, again, spoken or unspoken. And I'm looking across the room at, let's say, a company director, okay? And then I'm thinking about these questions from this perspective about that relationship, all right? So here we go. I'll walk you through step by step, and I'll give timings. Again, these timings might not be exactly what, might be too fast or too slow, so we'll just move through it as we can. Okay, so here we go. Please stand in profession 1. Could we have the posture diagram, please? Please pick a posture. Okay, now imagine you are that person in that profession thinking through this posture. And the question that you're going to first think about is, was sind aus dieser Perspektive die Stärken innerhalb dieser Beziehung? Wie könnte diese Stärke dazu beitragen, die Resilienz und Vitalität der Tanzszene zu fördern? So what are the strengths of this relationship that you're in right now from this perspective? And how could that strength help to increase the vitality and resilience of the dance field? So take a moment and think about this. When you're ready, you can go ahead and write down something. So you're standing is one position, you're thinking of that question. Was sind aus dieser Perspektive die Stärken innerhalb dieser Beziehung? Wie könnte diese Stärke dazu beitragen, die Resilienz und Vitalität der Tanzszene zu fördern? What are the strengths of this relationship? How can that help the field? Okay. And again, this might seem a little fast or it might seem slow, but go ahead and write down whatever you thought from that perspective. And then we'll switch over to the other side with the same question. Okay, so let's wrap that up. And now if you could please go to the other side, to the other profession, and stand in that position. So you're back in the same relationship, but now you're in the other position. And please pick a posture. And please consider the same question from this angle. Was sind die Stärken innerhalb dieser Beziehung? What are the strengths of this relationship? So you're in the other position, you've picked a posture, and now you're thinking of the same question from this angle. Okay, go ahead. Was sind die Stärken? What are the strengths of this relationship? How can those strengths build resilience and vitality in the field? Okay, when you're ready, go ahead and write down what you're thinking. Okay, great. Burkhard, can you switch back to me for a moment for the viewers? Okay, so now let's go. We have 2 more questions. So we're going to repeat the same process. So if you can come back to position 1. And now we're moving into looking at what are the challenges of these dependencies? What do they do in the systems? So if you can come back again, you're going to reconnect to that relationship. Find yourself physically in profession 1. You can choose a posture or not choose a posture, whatever is most useful to you. And then you're going to consider the next question. So go ahead and pick a posture if you want to. Get yourself located in that profession. And the next question is, was sind aus dieser Perspektive die Schwächen in der Beziehung zwischen den beiden Professionen? So what is the weakest point in this relationship or the system connecting these 2 professions from this perspective? And again, this might be the result of outside systems or outside forces. So notice where the difficulty arises and notice why it's arising, okay? Can switch back to the postures, please, Burkhard. And when you're ready, go ahead and write it down. Your thoughts? Okay, let's go back to the second profession, please. Pick a posture if it's helpful, and consider the question from this different angle. Reconnect to that dynamic of that relationship. Was sind die Schwächen in der Beziehung? What are the weakest points in this relationship or system? Where does the difficulty arise? And when you're ready, you go ahead and write down your thoughts. Okay, let's wrap that up and let's come back together. Okay, so we have one more question. And as we approach this question, I want to invite us to think about power. I think a lot about power these days in terms of decision-making and in terms of conflict. And I think about conflict as this place of possibility. Oftentimes conflict can be seen as an endpoint or a stuck point or a failure. But in fact, conflict is this very generative place. It's a place where things can arise because we can find out what's important. We can figure out, we can see the mechanisms because the conflict makes it obvious. And so I want to also think about the fact that the most obvious power in a situation is never the only kind of power. And that power can come from many angles. And we can also unite different powers, even on different sides of a conflict. So as we think about the Schwachstellen and the difficulties, this is not about failure. This is about possibility, okay? So we're gonna do one more question. And here, let's do, if you can go back to your paper, we're gonna do one side and then the other right away. You don't need to write down in between. You can pick a posture or not. So if you can go to your first position, please. And now we're thinking, okay, you can pick a posture if you'd like to. And now, wie könnte aus dieser Perspektive die Beziehung aussehen, wenn sie für alle Beteiligten vorteilhafter gestaltet wäre? So what might this relationship or this system look like if it were more beneficial to everyone involved from this perspective? So this means what would be different? What would it feel like? What would it look like? How would it change? We don't need to solve everything right now. What we're noticing is, what would the change be like? The details of it we can figure out later maybe, but feel it right now. You can do one side and then the other. Okay, and when you felt both sides, go ahead and write down any thoughts you might have. Okay, so if we can wrap that up. So now, without needing to go back to the papers, you can if you want to, but let's go to the last question of C, and this will be the last question of the afternoon. And all of these ideas are intended also for you to be able to carry forward into the conversations that you're moving into next. Okay, so now if you could take 5 minutes, and given all the things that you've just been thinking through, consider what might be some concrete steps that could be taken to address the weaknesses that we just have discovered in our systems. Where can that change take place? Who has the power to make impactful decisions? Maybe the power is not the most obvious power. And maybe one thing you can think about is, what would be one thing that you would love to see change that seems like it would be impossible? But what if it was possible? What's one thing you'd love to see change, even if it seems like it might be impossible to do? Okay, great. All right, so let's come back together one final time. Thank you so much for all this work you've been putting in. I know this is a lot of thinking and moving, and I really appreciate it. And I know the Dachverband this information is going to be really valuable for the work that they're doing and the work that we're all doing. So let's come back together. You can either stand or sit as you wish. And we're going to go backwards through the postures as a way to come back to ourselves, okay? All right, so let's start. Let's connect to each other. All of us, as we're spread out across the globe, everyone who's thinking in dance, who's working in dance, who's dancing, everything that means, that the power that lies in this network, the strength and the intelligence and the thinking and the beauty and the unknown and the willingness to risk and to work and to move forward. Okay, let's come down to our heads. And let's think about what we choose to practice every day. Why are we practicing in that? What's important to us? What do we choose to practice? Okay, let's come down to our throat. Let's think about what is unspoken. What can maybe never be spoken? What should be spoken? What is it that we're speaking of? Okay. Come to your chest. Connect to everything that's important to you. Feel the network of lines that connect to you, to the world. Okay. Come back to your own body with your hands on your belly. See how you're feeling right now. Connect back with yourself. We've been through a lot of different people and professions here. Come back to your own body. Good. And then hands down, connect to where you are right now, where you move out from, where you begin every time. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. So if you're willing now to take the thoughts and the ideas and the questions and the issues and everything that you came up in this last hour, if you're willing to send them to the Dachverband Tanz, that would be fantastic. It will remain anonymous, so no one will know who wrote what. They'll use it for their own work. And you have 15 minutes or so now, I think, to, if you want to organize those thoughts, however you want to offer them back into Dachverband. You can either maybe take pictures of what you've written, or if you want to type them in and send them in an email. In any case, the email address should be across the bottom of the screen there. And I would like to say thank you very much, and how much I love the field, and how grateful I am for all that I've experienced in it. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the conference.